Greetings from the Northwoods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I'm Natasha, and this is Plant-Centered Living. Today I would like to talk to you about cooking without added oils. This topic was brought up by Elena from Germany, and she had questions and asked me for some tips on cooking without added oil. I would first like to begin by saying why I choose to cook without added oil. The first is that additional oil in the way that we eat, it has been linked to inflammation in the body. And inflammation in the body has been linked to disease, to pain, to many things that I personally want to avoid. The second thing is that I really want to get my calories from whole grains, beans, seeds, fruits, vegetables, nuts, things that are nutrient dense and can provide me with vitamins and minerals. So I would much rather get my calories from those whole foods rather than empty calories from added oil. Now, there are several things that you need to know about cooking without added oil. And the first is that fat is the flavor carrier within most dishes. And when you remove it, then it makes it a bit more difficult to make that dish more flavorful. So you need to be thoughtful in the things that you use to make that dish really burst with flavor. So there are several things that I would like to bring up. The first is something called nutritional yeast. And I bring it up first because it's just a fun topic. Many people don't know what it is, and I do have some here, so I'm going to show it to you. It is this flaky yellow stuff. So you can kind of see it in here. It is usually found in the refrigerated section at your local health food store or co-op. Do not confuse it with brewer's yeast or baker's yeast. They are not the same thing. This can be used to sprinkle on baked potatoes or mashed potatoes. You can put it in soups and casseroles. It kind of gives it that added little cheesy, buttery flavor. Go ahead and look up nutritional yeast online. I personally get the Red Star brand. So yeah, do a little research, but that is one thing that you can use to add some flavor enhancement to dishes without added oil. The second thing is really get to know herbs and spices, not only fresh herbs like cilantro and basil and dill. Those are also great dried, but I would also encourage you to expand your spice and your herb horizons in that try things like coriander and cumin and smoked paprika. There are many different herbs and spices out there that add flavor to dishes. And what you have to do is you have to experiment, because what you might like might not be something that someone else would like. So just go ahead, have fun, experiment. And I would say go to a bulk food store, a natural food store, your local co-op to get those herbs and spices, because oftentimes you can buy just a little bit of them. So you can try them and see if you like them before you invest in buying a whole container of them. And when it does come to herbs and spices, it does matter where you purchase them. So I would highly encourage you not to purchase spices that are super cheap, like at a Family Dollar store or a dollar store, or sometimes even the closeout places, because many of those herbs and spices are cut with other things to make them go further. So they're certainly not going to have the same flavor capacity that a higher end herb or spice might have. But again, herbs and spices will not break the bank if you get them in small quantities and try them out. I would caution you, though, that a tendency that many of us have when something does not taste the way that it normally does because the added oil hasn't been added to the dish is that you want to dump a lot of salt in there. So I would highly caution you to stay away from dumping lots of salt into a dish. It's going to be probably the first thing that you grab. Now, I am not at all saying to avoid salt. I'm just saying be mindful that you're going to want to use extra salt where you haven't in the past. Those are some things that you can do to add flavor to your dishes. The other thing is, you might be wondering, well, how do I saute things if I'm not using oil? Well, you can saute things in water. I don't mean a ton of water. You're not going to boil something. You put just enough water in there so that it doesn't stick to the pan, and you use the water to saute. Now, if you want to add even more additional flavor, you can use veggie broth or veggie bouillon in water. And again, the fruits and vegetables, well, not fruits, but the vegetables usually that you're sauteing will take on that flavor of the bouillon. It will soak it up, or the broth that you're using. Now, you might be saying, well, what kind of pan do I use with that? Well, what I use is I personally use stainless steel. I am not a fan of Teflon coated anything or nonstick pans. I just, in general, avoid them. I prefer stainless steel. It's easy to clean. You can also use cast iron that's coated with an enamel. That also works very well. So I would encourage you to either use stainless or, again, use cast iron with a coating of enamel on it. But here's one of my pans that I use. This one right here is just a saucepan, and it's stainless steel. You can see on the inside here. This one happens to have a copper bottom, but you certainly don't need a copper bottom pan. And again, I have purchased all of my pans secondhand at thrift stores, so you don't have to break the bank to change over your cookware if that's what you need to do. So again, sauteing in water or veggie bouillon is a great way to go. Additionally, you might be wondering, so what do I do when I bake something? I always put a coating of oil when I bake something. Now, there are some things that you may use a tiny bit of oil on there because it's the best way to go. But in general, if you are using a baking sheet to do things like roast vegetables, or perhaps you're baking cookies or something else, you can use parchment paper. Parchment paper is wonderful. I have some here, so I don't dump it on the floor. So this is the parchment paper that I use, and it is a brand called If You Care. And if I show it to you here, it's probably going to be backwards on the camera anyway. But this stuff is great. You line your baking sheet or your baking pan even with this, and when you're done, you just lift it out of there. And for me, what I do is I burn that in my wood stove, but it also is fully compostable, so you could just compost it. So for those who are concerned about environmental footprint, this certainly is something that you can again, dispose of in a way that is more environmentally friendly. So hopefully this has given you some tips on cooking without added oil. Again, do some research about nutritional yeast. Look at the pans that you have and maybe some pans that you want to switch out in your kitchen. Go to the store and look for some environmentally friendly parchment paper, and that should start to get you on the road to cooking without additional oils. Now, in my newsletter this week, I also have a great article from Forks Over Knives that also provides additional tips on cooking without oil. So be sure to visit the Consider This section of this week's newsletter to get more information on cooking without added oil. Again, thank you, Elena, for your question. And to those of you who are subscribers and out there watching, if you have questions, send them my way. I really like making videos from people's questions, because if one person is wondering something, chances are others also have that same question. And then that way we can support each other in the best way possible. Thank you for spending time with me today. I can't wait to talk with you next week. Take care, everybody.